linen fence to remind you of his purity. But it didn't just remind you of his purity. You were already carrying the guilt of your sickness or your sin. It reminded you how pitiful you were because he was so pure. That fence was so white and you felt so dirty. And you came carrying the load of your sacrifice, needing hope. And all you did was run into a fence that seemed to mock your condition. But if you just follow the fence around far enough, if you follow the obstacle around far enough, when you got to the east end and you made the curve, there was a 30-foot wide gate that was made of linens that were dyed purple and blue and scarlet. And against a white backdrop that declared your ugliness and his purity, suddenly you see this huge purple and blue and scarlet 30-foot wide gate that said, welcome, you can come in. All you saw was the fence that said there's something standing between you and the blood of atonement. But I want to take you back to the fence for just a moment, because sometimes God is in the waiting and in the details, Sister Destiny. And that was bleached white. There was a brass socket and there was a silver rod. And the silver represented the redemption of Jesus Christ. And the brass was an alloy that could not be unalloyed. It was copper and zinc. It was two things that came together to make something that was better and stronger, which represented the God-man, Jesus Christ, fully God and fully man, that would come to pay the price for your atonement and your redemption. And so while you had your face against the fence trying to wish that you had the blood and the sacrifice, if you would look at the details, in the details you would see redemption. You would see Jesus Christ. You would see the Lamb that was coming. Can I tell somebody right now, the enemy don't want you to see some of the details. He just wants you to see the obstacle of the fence, but Jesus is in the details. You need to rejoice over the small victory. You need to rejoice over the small things he did, the small word that he gave you, the small blessing that he sent you. If you get your mind back on the details, you'll see redemption in the details. I want you to notice with me. I promise my landing gear's down. Somebody say, I have hope. I want you to notice with me for just a moment. Scripture says that that gate was on the east side. When Adam and Eve were kicked out of God's place of perfection because of their sin, they went eastward out of Eden. Let me do this correctly. Eastward out of Eden. You read the scripture and study history. When Cain left the presence of the Lord, it says he went to the land of Nod. It was eastward from where he was. He left the presence of God going eastward. But when God gave them a redemption's plan through a tabernacle, he put the door, the gate to redemption, on the east side, which means to get to the altar, you had to walk westward. God was letting them know, I'm letting you get back in. Everything sin has pulled you out. It all pointed toward the Lamb at Calvary. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just preaching to myself today. It all pointed toward the Lamb at Calvary to let them know there is hope here. There is hope now. And there is hope coming. I've come to preach to somebody in this house today. There's another reason it was on the east side. That's because that's where the tribe of Judah was and the sun rays. Because the weeping may only endure for a night. But when you get around the east side of the tent where the sun is lifting up in the morning, joy comes in the morning. In the shadows of Judah, in the shadows of your praise, you're going to find your entrance back into redemption. If you keep praising, you got hope, because you've got in the shadow of your praise, you're going to find your entrance into atonement. Somebody say, I have hope. I've come to declare in somebody's heart today, Jesus is following you to the house. Jairus didn't even have as much faith as the centurion. The centurion said, Jesus, you don't have to come to my house. You just say the word where you are and my servant will be healed. Jairus didn't have enough faith to believe it that strong. He had just enough faith to get to Jesus and believe, if he'll follow me home, I believe he can heal my daughter. I wish life didn't have interruptions. Sometimes it's a godly interruption. Sometimes it's a hellish interruption. Sometimes it's just a life interruption. But somewhere between his initial contact with the Christ and the healing his daughter needed comes a woman that's had an issue of blood for 12 years, and she stops the entire procession, reaching out and touching the hem of his garment. Jesus, whoa, somebody touched me. And just that small interruption in what was meant to be a journey for healing, just that small interruption pushed his daughter over the edge as she drew her last breath before healing ever got to the house. I wish it weren't so, but sometimes the smallest interruptions can have the biggest consequences. It can be, there's a book I started reading I need to get back on. It's called The Tipping Point. Sometimes the smallest interruptions can cause the most chaos, commotion. And it's what put her over the tipping point. And a girl that needed healing suddenly wouldn't do with the healing anymore. Her last breath was drawn. Her eyes were closed in death. And when the messenger came, you can always rely on it. When you don't need bad news the most, that's when it's going to show up again. The messenger from the house. The one that came to say, Jesus, bad news. I don't know what, or Jairus, I don't know what held you up. Whatever held you up has put her down. Don't trouble the master. I find the irony in his statement, don't trouble the master any longer. He still declared him to be master, but didn't have enough faith to believe him for his mastery. Jesus, seeing the fear struck in the heart of Jairus, that was obviously suddenly feeling little to no hope, Jesus said, be not fearful or doubting, only believe. I don't know what he